Hi, folks. Welcome to the Sweet Stream podcast with a very special guest today. It's Paddy Cullivan. Yeah. Okay, Paddy, great to have you here in Belfast. Listen, we just went to your show last night, and but you know what? Tell us all about it because I thought it was fantastic. The name of the show is
I Can't Believe It's Not Ireland.
Okay, then. Well, what exactly is that all about?
Well,
sounds a bit buttery, Paddy, to be quite honest.
Well, you know how we met each other. We met through our profound love of 1798.
Yeah, no, we're absolute anoraks.
Yeah, I did my show, The Murder of Michael Collins, in 2022, then The Murder of Wolfe. And then I decided I've dealt with the past so much that I'm going to look at the future. The weirdest thing about it was I was kind of touring around Downpatrick and Portlanone and Mahara, which I never pronounced correctly until I actually played there.
Yeah.
And I was doing these shows and I couldn't believe the amount of actual Protestant and Presbyterians going to the shows. So I thought from last June, I said, I need to do a show, not about the past, but about the future. And I was thinking of Guy Biner, and I was thinking of Eamon Phoenix's great talk, Remembering the Future. And I wonder what the hell that meant. And then I was thinking of Kierkegaard when he said, the greatest tragedy is remembering a future you're never going to have. And I thought, no, let's be like Noam Chomsky and have optimism over despair, Sean.
Absolutely. You're sounding very revolutionary there,
So I said, let's go into the future. Let's see what Ireland would be like in 2032. And I was sitting with Stephen McCracken, would you believe, in Antrim. And he was doing that 11-day festival of 1798 stuff, which was incredible in itself. And my show had tons of Protestants and Presbyterians coming to it. And I said, I need to do a show showing that on the ground in this country, everybody's hanging out, learning from each other, going on your walking tour yourself.
We're all stealing each other's ideas, which is share the love,
which is
share the 1798.
Nothing wrong with it. And I sat there saying, I want to do it about what the future United Ireland will be like, but I can't use United Ireland because United Ireland is full of connotations.
Okay.
I can't use New Ireland because New gets old.
Yeah.
As well,
Okay, yeah.
I can't use Shared Ireland. That's the Fianna Fáil one, shared.
It's a bit weak.
Bit
pissy on it, Can I use that word? The hell, what I'm going to use it. Sounds a bit pissy.
Agreed, Ireland, agreed.
Sounds a bit mushy.
We're not the most agreeable, so that's
it's hard to find without offending anybody, as in,
yeah.
I dive into the dictionary and look at the Thor side and go, and then no, I can't find anything. And then it just happens.
So as I'm chatting away, Stephen says, well, why don't you call it I Can't Believe It's Not Ireland? Which I think now someone Neil Delamere pointed out to me, that's an old Patrick Kielty line. Right?
Really?
Believe it or not.
Didn't steal it.
But I didn't steal it.
From the Empire days?
It came via that northern sense of humor, which I don't quite understand, Sean.
It's very dry.
It's very dry. But and I sat there thinking, what does he mean by that? And then I thought, actually, it's true. Because when we wake up, my premise is that in 2030 we have our border poll, and 69% of people north and south vote for unity. And so by 2032, what is Ireland like? What is this new country like? And it's interesting, but will it be just the north subsumed into the south? Will it just be melded into the republic we already have there? No, of course not, because that's not what negotiations about, and that's not what's going to happen. We have an opportunity to make a brand new country. So when we wake up with our new Ireland in the 2030s, we're going to be saying, this isn't the republic I grew up with, this 100-year-old concept with its anthem that it quickly got on its flag and all the rest of it. Neither will the north of Ireland be the northern state that it was for 100 years. This is going to be a brand new Ireland, north and south. So everyone's going to wake up in the morning saying, I can't believe it's not Ireland, the Ireland I knew before.
Mm-hmm. So in many ways, where do you see, I think there's quite a lot of ideas you put out there last night, I thought was really, really good. Ideas about the usual stuff, flags and anthems. And it very much is sort of saying to people, something big is going on. Probably the first time, as you rightly said, from about 800 years ago, we're about to create, or we're on the verge of creating, maybe 5-10 years, a brand new country in Western Europe. This hasn't happened. That hasn't happened since the big fight in World War I when they all went to the League of Nations and they all carved up countries and literally made countries.
Yeah.
But this is different. This is unique. And I think my impression last night was we have just been given a Meccano set. I says, right, guys, off you go. What do you think? And it sounds a bit simple to say that, but it was literally saying, do you think people grasp we're on the verge of something really big?
Well, I think it's going to be very, very exciting, and no better bunch of people to have a mechano set than the great engineering
the
geniuses,
shipbuilders,
the shipbuilders of the north,
bonfire builders.
Well, you know what I'm saying. I mean, I do point out to people, Belfast was the richest and most successful city on earth.
It was, yeah,
in 1900. And the vagaries of what happened and everything that went on. But we've that potential. We still got potential to create something really brilliant. And industrialization never took off in the south the way it did here.
Yeah.
But my proposals for like a kind of a high-speed rail that circumnavigates the entire island, so you can get from one city to the other in 15 minutes. There are really exciting ideas of a new capital, because obviously in the agreed Ireland, no one's going to agree on where the capital is.
Of course.
You know that, John.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember we were all down at the the Ireland's Future event in
that's right,
in Dublin, which was phenomenal. And I was trying to get 4 people to come up to a gig in Whelan's who didn't want to leave the ballad session.
Yes,
you know what I mean? I couldn't even get them to agree to that.
I think we ended up in Whelan's with you that night.
Well, you did. Thank you for coming.
we were the secondary choice.
I was trying to educate everybody and show that we could get away from these Wolfe tone ballads and we can move up to somewhere else. But in that context, I think the best solution will be a new capital in Athlone with a million strong city. At the very center of the country, our new Parliament building there. Again, engineered, put together by this amazing new generation, I think, of people who are not just tech savvy, but in every way, builders, engineers, everything like that. We're going to make a great country.
So the whole idea about what is happening and the type of conversations you're having with your audiences, of course, is we need the idea of assemblies or people's assemblies, all this sort of idea. If everyone needs to talk the way they did in the South through the different referendums, not obviously the latest ones, but the ones before, where everybody got together, and you're like a mini, you're a mini show going on in Ireland as a mini assembly. You're getting feedback. People are telling you, but it really, the government and different forces out there, different government bodies, etc., particularly in the South, need to get on this game. Are they missing a trick? Are they deliberately doing this, or what's going on?
Well, I mean, one of the things I say, as you know, I mean, if you looked at Twitter, if you read the Belfast Telegraph, or you listened to Stephen Nolan, you would think the North was in a state of 1991 or something.
Yes,
you know what I mean? It's like time travel. Everyone's at loggerheads. Everyone's at each other's throat. On the ground, it's completely different. If I'm in Downpatrick and I'm mixed audiences coming to my gig, last night was a mixed audience in Belfast, and I just decided, and it's not, look, I know that the job of opposition, let's say in the South, is to say, you got to get a citizens' assembly together, government, but the problem with all of that is delay becomes a tactic on every side. You know what I mean? And so I decided, and of course, Ireland's Future are putting incredible meetings together. But I just wanted to bring it into the bars and the theaters. So I like to call I'm putting citizens' assemblies together.
Exactly.
People are paying tickets and buying my merch and all the rest of it too, but I have to make a living as well. But what I'm saying is it's important that we get together and have these fun conversations. I mean, some of the responses last night were amazing.
Yeah, when you were talking about one of the issues, which I thought was quite funny, was the time you talk about a mixed marriage. And which is really weird. We're the only people in Western Europe, or I would say actually the globe, that it's a mixed marriage is a mixed race. In America, it's like when I was in America, when you say from mixed marriage, they'd ask you, well, is it Puerto Rican, or is it a Latino? And over here, it's quite unique. We have a mixed marriage. I'm a product of a mixed marriage, and so are many of my friends. Matter of fact, I think there's more mixed marriages. But I always thought that way anyway, because most of my friends who would be very open-minded. Doesn't mean because you're a mixed marriage, you're going to be very open-minded either. You can go either way. But I thought it was a really funny thing that this whole idea about being mixed marriage is the daftest thing. When people say, but are you a Catholic mixed marriage or a Protestant mixed marriage? Yeah. And we even have that. We used to say those things. What are your views on that? How do you see it as someone from the South? How do you see that?
Well, I just found it really strange that all our lives we were disagreeing over fine points of Christianity. Now, of course, the religious wars of the 1600s are nothing to sneeze at, but on the finer points of Christianity. But it was always funny to me that we said mixed marriage, when it's, as I joked with my diverse white audience, of maybe one or two sprinklings of of color. You know, our mixed marriage in Ireland should be really Phil Lynott, you know, and his dad and Philomena Lynott. But for us, it's to do with religion. So I joke with my diverse white audience of Protestants and Catholics. But of course, there's many products, you know, from Wolfe Tone himself, whose mom was a Catholic, from Patrick Pearse, whose father was a Unitarian Englishman. Many of our greatest thinkers come from those mixed marriages.
Yeah.
And in a sense, in the new Ireland will be a mixed marriage itself.
I was talking to when I was looking back all through old records, it was Comerford. What was Comerford's first name?
Moira Comerford.
Moira Comerford was really been interviewed before she died. I think it might have been the Robert Keyes interviews in 1978, the journalist, broadcaster, historian, and she mentions about how we owe a great debt to the Protestants. And you've probably seen the clip, and she's quite an old woman, and she was going on about, yes, we do. And she says, Wolfe Tone himself. And she was like mentioning we owe them. And she was sort of saying to us, we still have an obligation to what they were about. And she sort of sounds up with Mr. Trick here. What did she mean? I was sort of saying, what's she trying to say here? Did she want to get us back to the thinking of tone? Or is she saying, we've Mr. Trick here and we should get back to tone?
Oh, absolutely. Well, like as I push in the show, I think when O'Connellism came along, when Daniel O'Connell came along pushing this Catholic, Irish, Green nationalist agenda, that was very much a different ethos to Wolfe Tone, who was saying, doesn't matter if you're Protestant, Catholic, or dissenter, we are all common name of Irishmen.
That's what your chap with the memory of the dead, John Kells Ingram, the famous poem that he'd written in 1843 when he was 20. He became the Prophet of Trinity, and he never admitted he wrote the poem until he was in his late 80s. He told his grandkids, and the reason why is because he was criticizing the greening of the cause by Daniel O'Connell. But the thing is that it was basically like the Young Irelanders, which are again another bunch of Presbyterians and prods who were up to republicanism again. But in the verse, it's well known that he criticized them in the verses. He's all a knave but half a slave, who slights his country thus. But a true man like you, man, will fill your glass with us. He never admitted he wrote that because he knew that Catholic Ireland might come after him.
Absolutely. And you know, I don't think we don't just need to decolonize Ireland, but we need to de-O'Connellize it. That's a line I sadly didn't get into the show last night, but it's, you know, for me, I probably put about 200 Protestants on screen last night in the show. It's really a show about
it is indeed, yeah.
And it's really
dissenters.
Dissenters, really.
Dissenters, I love the dissenters.
That great word, dissenters. I love it because everyone should dissent now and again. But I think you know, I put up, you know, there's Robert Emmett, there's Wolfe Tone, there's Thomas Davis, one of the greatest songwriters, as well as one of the greatest thinkers, who said, educate them may be free. Charles Stewart Parnell, all these men were Protestants.
I know. I think that
all these people fighting for Ireland, but the one of the main points I make in it is the ability for the Unionist and the Loyalist Protestant tradition to change their minds on a dime, on a very pragmatic and practical dime, by the way. This is not some kind of satire or critique of them. I often find that people, you know, from my tradition, from republicanism, will kind of look down their noses a little bit and go, that's a bit antediluvian, or they said no to this and they say no to that. But at certain times, be it 1798, the Protestant tradition turned and said, no, we need a fairer, better country. In 1834, they went from being anti-union to being pro-union because they saw the rise of O'Connell. And that's when the Presbyterian and Protestant churches came together. Right, in 1913, after being anti-home rule all this time, they became pro-home rule for Ulster with their own proclamation.
Still a bit of independent-minded people.
Independent-minded people who change, as John Maynard Keynes said, you know, if the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir? Yep. And of course, they changed their mind in 2030 when they voted overwhelmingly for unity, as I talk in the future about the past.
And one of the other things is about the independent mind that the dissenters, the Protestants have, particularly the Northern Ulster Presbyterians. In many ways, those ideas are still with them, and I do believe that they're waiting. And you're saying they could change their mind, but in reality, what are they waiting? I mean, one of the things you did mention I thought was very good last night was you mentioned that it's good to say no. They get rid of all this absolute quagmire of. Sometimes you need people to get rid of all the shite and say, listen, that little story about someone complaining about certain things. You can't make the road because of the snail.
Yeah,
I thought it sort of epitomized that you didn't mean to offend all the green type finger type people,
but I did.
But you did. But you know what? It's like £20 billion later. We build the flipping road anyway.
Yeah.
And because the snail was all right, we managed to get round it. But by that time, your kids were growing up and they never got to use the road.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like he fixed the road. Yeah, well, you got to build the road first.
Well, I love yes, it's a positive word. Yes is the byword for my show, but also no, the power of no is incredible, Sean. It's the ability to cut through the faff, to say, no, we're not doing that. That's all just rubbish. And we need to get this done now. So I'm looking forward to that kind of pragmatic, practical response. When unionists take power or have power in this new united country.
So you worked out there were 15% of the votes.
15% of the votes.
They could be in every coalition government from here to eternity if they play their cards right.
Well, almost like the Irish Nationalist Party in Westminster in the 1890s. Yeah. They will hold the balance of power no matter what, especially in a pure system.
Yeah, yeah. And
therefore they can, I go into like Q-tourism and stuff like that, which I think is a trait of both traditions on the island.
Yeah.
We'll go back into Parliament if you give us £1 billion, which
fair enough.
I have to hand it to it.
Yeah.
I have to say, good.
They'll just tell Apple, the citizen guys, you ain't getting that money back. We're going to use it and we're going to bribe the unionists with it.
put a price on it, whatever. Yeah. But I just think there's a power in no. There's a power in, like we just saw the power of no in the South, where, we'd gotten these two very progressive referendums and then the government just went one step too far and just said, and the people said, no, we're not buying this one. We bought the other two, fine. And it doesn't mean that the whole country is turned antediluvian or far right or anything else like that. They're just saying this far and no further. And, I think part of the agreement and part of what gets everybody together sitting around the table is to go, something? I vehemently disagree with your position, but I'm going to put my head into your head and see why you feel that way. And the more I went around the country last year and the more I talked to Protestant Presbyterians, I saw that they had a massive point. They had a massive point in 1922 not joining the Republic. You saw what the Republic became.
Yeah.
An autocratic Catholic state that failed economically for 20 to 30 years until our miracle.
Yeah.
And when the miracle came along, then we took over. And I think that's the thing that will turn especially the population of the North to look good. Where are we better positioned? Are we better positioned as we are waiting for Westminster to hand money over, raising our own revenue, or are we better with a new paradigm? I think they'll choose the new one.
You think there's what is going on at the moment in people's minds? There seems to be a renaissance the last couple of years. Not because we're
That's your fault. That's your fault.
It's quite a few of us doing it. We've all been on it. I mean, we've got Claire's wonderful book, which I am going to. I think it's here.
Yes,
it's up in here. But I mean, Claire's got a book out. I've got a chapter in the book, which I'm absolutely think it's wonderful. But there's something rustling in the bushes here. Something is going on the last 3, 4, 5 years. And we all seem to be focusing on having a reset, like a big reset. And it seems to be resetting with the Presbyterians, the Centres, and the Protestants. And I've been walking about the streets in Dublin now, which is great. We're evolving that whole tour. And I just got my hat here, by the way. I think I'm just going to show people. Paddy, you can have the hat too if you want. There's no big deal there.
Lovely.
You can have the hat too. So the good thing is that something's going on.
Yes.
And your shows, although the Michael Collins show, which is great, it sort of adds into this idea that we're trying to look at things differently, not revisionism. It's trying to get back to why all the shite? Why did we have to put up with it? And sometimes we're saying to ourselves, let's look at things differently. Let's have a look back again. Let's go back to what it was all about. Because we were having a conversation last night about how Thomas Davis, my new view, I think he's brilliant. When I read his poetry and I look at what he was getting up to, he's the guy that finds Wolfe Tongue. It's this guy, another Protestant, goes out and finds him. He'd been lying quiet for 34 years. He was only discovered. And it didn't even mark the grave. It was buried within the tones. And I'm like, he goes out and finds him. And he creates and tells people, listen, this guy's really important. And you sort of get this idea that it's as if I'm a bit like Thomas Davis, or we all feel a bit like Thomas Davis on the other men, women. There's obviously a lot of women involved. They've get written out as well, which leads me to my next question. A lot of ideas about women are written out of our history in Ireland. What do you think? Why do you think that is?
It's part of the general, biases of the time and of the day. I mean, for me, Davis is important for two things: the amazing songs, Nation Once Again, The West's Awake, Bowden Sound, Graveyard. But it's his correspondence between him and Matilda Tone. And of course, Matilda to me is one of the great characters of Irish history. She was as brilliant and erudite as Tone. She saved his life at least twice.
I didn't know that Davis was corresponding to Matilda. But I just realized, of course, he would be.
They raised the money for the first grave of Tone.
Of course.
And of course, it's beautiful between them. She's an elderly woman, he's a young man, but they have a real bond.
Yeah.
He dies before her. I mean, it's this poor woman.
Right, he died young.
Everybody that all her kids, Wolfe Tone, her second husband, all die before her. She dies at 80 years of age, at the height of the famine. And it's just incredibly sad. But she's very funny. You read her work, you read her writing in Tone's book, Life, which she brought out in 1826 with her son, William.
That's right.
And, it's because of this woman in history. If we didn't have Matilda Tone, we don't have Wolfe Tone. He doesn't exist. And a lot of this goes on. It's unsung. In my Michael Collins show, I talk especially about the women's vote in 1922, how they were denied. All women under 30, about 400,000 women were denied the vote. That's what got the treaty really over the line.
Well, it was pretty strange. I said to people on the tour about, we've got, when I do the 1790 tour, so there are three classes of citizens, and actually there are four. You've got this, obviously the Protestant ascendancy at the time. We have the Protestant Anglicans, and then we have the dissenters, second class citizens. First class are the Protestants, Anglicans, second class dissenters, third class are the Catholics.
Yeah.
And I said, there's a fourth class.
Yeah.
Women. They don't even come into anything. And then I say, and by the way, folks, you got to realize that I see there's a few women here over the age of just over 30, but you never got the vote until less than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm talking 230 years ago today. And think about it. And look how liberal the likes of Mary Ann McCracken was. Look at her mind and how she was such a badass. How she was able to think. I remember, and of all the people of those days in 1790, particularly onwards, a lot of them all very died on, but she's one of the very few that survives and protects their memory. And I says, imagine if we had 20 more like her.
Oh yeah.
What a world would be living in today.
And one of the reasons, I mean, they're great at seeing corruption. Women are the best at seeing men doing a terrible job.
They've got like a sixth sense. It's sort of like, I don't sense this.
You're doing something dreadful.
Intuition.
Here. Yeah, you're doing it badly. And even Mary Ann McCracken in the 1830s, 40s writes, and kind of accepts the union, going, look, it's better at least than this corrupt, awful Protestant ascendancy we had. So at least, and so she worked for reform. And, that's part of that whole 1800s part, is the embrace of the union by unionists, is because things are running a bit better and a bit less corrupt.
And one of the points that I reinforce sometimes, and people don't know this, is that at that particular time, during the Act of Union when it was being passed, the Catholic Church backed it, and the Orange Order didn't.
Yes.
They didn't back the union.
Again.
And they're very shifty when you ask them about this. But you can see why.
Yeah.
This is, well, we've got them all beaten, we've hung them all and put them on the spit. And, Tones dead.
And we have our own parliament in Dublin.
We've got our own grift here, dude. That's awesome. Let's really hammer them. And obviously the Brits turned around and said, no. That can't happen again, guys, because we have another plan. And you guys are coming in with us. So you stop acting the Ballots.
Really, you could look at 1798 sometimes as a civil war between enlightened Protestants and Presbyterians and
the landlords,
and their helpers. And it's a bit like the American Civil War in a sense. And it's funny how you go to America then and you see how Presbyterians shaped that country in the rebellious revolutionary manner that they did. Most of the presidents are descended from there. One factor that I keep telling people that they don't get is that of the 37 million Americans who are Irish American, less than 50% are Catholic.
Yeah, that's right.
Most of them are.
What was the original bunch that went out in the 1720s, 30s, and 40s, including even the Tone great-grandparents, not great-grandparents, but that family.
And the great Bill Atkins, who put on the wonderful 225 celebration in November, the American man who came over and did all that work. He's descended from the American Tones. And it's funny, like in the show I say, they gave us the Declaration of Independence, they gave us the American Republic and the Beverly Hillbillies.
Absolutely. And one other thing I say to people is that when all these Presbys went over to basically to Pennsylvania, which is, I used to live in Pennsylvania.
Mm.
And the big thing about that was they went over and they sort of, yeah, lads, where's the land for you? Yeah, it's just great. It's over there. And they look over, obviously, and they realize you can have it. It's all free. The only thing is, you sort of got to kill everybody on it. So like, our hands have got to be, you know, we were on the tiller of a lot of bad things. And I mean, I mean, the Ulster Presbyterians and, well, suppose maybe both sides really, a lot of it does happen. But I had someone in a tour one time said to me, that wasn't us. And I'm like, what do you mean it wasn't us? And what he was saying was, well, that was them Presbyterians did all that.
Oh yeah.
I says, dude, you gotta look at the big picture here.
Yeah.
Do you ever see that movie, Gangs of New York? Do you ever see the movie when there's a big rat at the end?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, Scorsese hit it very, very well.
Yes.
But that was the main riot in New York. It was a race riot. You know, they didn't pick the bit in 4 miles up the road towards Harlem, which was basically fields. They didn't talk about going into an orphanage and basically killing a lot of black people.
I know.
And it was pretty bad stuff. So both sides have got to be responsible. And I think I always talk about these things. We have to face up to both of what we get up to, the Catholic and the Protestant migrators that went over to America.
But then life, you know, it isn't that simple either. You know, it was my dad was always saying to me about, you know, even in Cavan, in the graveyards, you'd strangely see Protestant graves next to Catholic graves in certain places.
Yeah.
The penal laws weren't as hardcore as they were made out to be.
Yeah.
Because a bit like me going around the north and seeing how everyone gets on just as people, as a community. Because I never talk about my different communities in the north because everybody's living on top of each other. Let's be honest.
Yep, that's true.
And so, you know, that was similar in all of these situations. Everywhere you look, you'll see there's something that's an aberration from the kind of very simple story we tell ourselves about stuff.
Okay.
So even in that context, I would say that, you know, people did work together. People, you know, they made the best of what's a pretty awful situation. I mean, I joke that when the plantations happened, you know, that James I was being a hippie. He wanted to bring everyone together in a multicultural place called the North of Ireland and, you know, let all the religions live together. Unfortunately, at the height of the religious wars in Europe.
A lot of people don't realize that James I was the main chap in Scotland at the time because he was living in Scotland. He was the main chap that was supplying all the armaments and explosives and gunpowder to O'Neill. And it was an open secret that he was doing it. He was basically riding 2 horses just in case the crown wasn't going to come to him.
Yeah.
But he was the main supplier of explosives causing bother in Ireland.
Oh yeah.
But he was supplying his Scottish lords were supplying O'Neill because O'Neill had big connections in Scotland. So when he realized he had the crown secured, then he went down to London and got his crown, and then he sort of decided to saddle it. But people don't know these little intricacies of history, which is fantastic.
But nothing changes. I mean, you know, American companies supplied the Germans in World War II at the height of it, even when America entered the war. You know, even now we have these situations going on all over the world where armaments are coming from places into new conflicts. And you know, that's the battle is, I think the battle that you and I have as part of enlightenment, as part of enlightening people to history, is to remove the old cliched story, take away that single binary thing, and go, look, it's a lot more sophisticated than that. It's a bit like the mixed marriage thing. We don't realize how many people on this island are actually from mixed backgrounds.
Yeah.
And, you know, what I'm trying to do is get people to have a more sophisticated view just of everything. And also the future, you know, if you talk to Southern people, I've been looking at Brendan O'Leary's Aaron's project. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And the way he, you know, has spoken to hardcore unionists, and they're kind of, there are things that they would say, no, we will never do this. But they, you know, they want just British citizenship, but they like the Commonwealth. You talk to Southern people, never into the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Over my dead body stuff. Flag, anthem. You know, have you heard the anthem? The anthem, like every anthem, is about guns and fighting and we'll win and you'll lose. You know,
that was interesting when you brought that up.
I want to move
flags
past,
and move by flags and moving by anthems and moving by the Commonwealth. And you sort of got to look at yourself and says, well, we don't like the Commonwealth. Well, lads, we've got to be honest with you. You've got to understand, you just don't know what it's like to live in the North. You've lived in the South for 100 years.
Yeah.
And you used to beat your chest about the Commonwealth. Well, I understand, but that was 100 years ago for you guys. It's still alive up the road. Yeah. People are still part of it. And how do you accommodate that? Exactly. Someone, a very senior Republican said to me, well, that's fair enough. I get that point. He says, well, why don't you put it to the people? And I says, what do you mean? He says, well, let the people of Ireland decide then, and don't make it a condition. You'll have to discuss it. But if the people in Ireland, 80%, or because you're not guaranteed, a lot of dissenters and Protestants don't like the Commonwealth either.
No,
a lot of them are completely not interested. But if it's like, massive amount of people in Ireland say, not really, no, that's something which really is something we're not willing to compromise on. I says, well, let put it to the vote. I says, well, we're going to get beaten here. So that's all going to have to be in the mix.
Well, it has to
begin with.
But do we need a vote? Do we need a vote? Like, this is what I laugh at in modern politics. Do we have to have a policy on everything? Do we have to have, put everything to the vote? I'm not being anti-democratic, but sometimes there's questions that are just practically answered by just doing it.
Yeah.
And not asking every sore arse in the country what their opinion is.
Yeah.
Vox pops on the street are not the reflection of the right thing to do. I'm not getting all devil air. The majority has no right to do wrong here, Sean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But he did have a damn point. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, people's hatred of the Commonwealth. Well, what is a Commonwealth? It's a grocery shop. It's an associated bunch of states with Charles I as the head, or Charles III as the head. And 36 of those states out of 56 are not monarchies. They're republics.
Yeah.
Whereas there's 12 monarchies in the EU. Do we have a problem with that? Like, we don't think about the King of Denmark. We're all offended and obsessed over every little bit of the British royal family. But do we realize there's 12 other royal families in Europe who are part of the EU? So if that's your offense, take it away, because already we're in an association of states, 27 of them, the EU, full of monarchies.
So let me ask you a question, cutting across you there. And it's, say, for example, Thomas Paine. Yeah. Now, we know what Paine was talking about in The Rights of Man and the common sense and all the Age of Reason, all the books that he Rights of Man, 2 pamphlets. If Paine would know, because the monarchy back then was quite authoritarian and had power. Good old King George, as mad as he was, walking around talking to trees at Windsor. Yeah, that's Windsor in England, of course, not Windsor Park here in Belfast. But if he would look at it today, and you look at even the American colonies today, if you just put yourself in their minds, and would Paine be like, oh, I don't like monarchy, and I don't like them having power, which they don't really have.
Yeah,
they're like a fairy story. And I'm saying, do you reckon Paine would Paine be on for that? What would Paine think?
I think people like Paine and Tone were practical, and they would say, like, my argument in the show is, we have an election every 7 years in the Republic for president, and it's the worst experience for months on end. Every type of person comes out from under a rock and says, I should be the best and most important Republican in the land. It in itself is an anti-Republican idea to have a president, or I'm the first citizen. Yeah. In a sense, a kind of a monarchy on a small stipend, doing some nice openings and garden parties, which is what the president does now. They've no power whatsoever. I think Paine and Tone would look at that and go, actually, just keep them there. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Not the overarching power of George III, but certainly they, even Stephen Fry has said the constitutional monarchies turn out to be kind of the most successful countries.
Okay.
And because we've dealt with that issue over there, they're mere figureheads. And so the president himself isn't part of the political class. He doesn't come from that kind of that rough and tumble. We've been very lucky in the South with Michael D. He's a brilliant poet president. We love that.
He's great, yeah.
And Mary McAleese was excellent too. So I'm arguing against myself here.
Yeah. Well, we got lucky.
We got lucky. We might not be so lucky again.
Maybe we get a Protestant president. You never know.
Well, we had the first one we had was Douglas Hyde.
Have we had one since though?
I'm not sure. Yes, Erskine Childers.
Oh yeah, Erskine, of course.
Yeah, he would have been Protestant. And son of Erskine.
Yeah. So here, we're going to finish off here, but I've got to ask you one more question, and it's probably more to do with not so much about 1798 and about what's happening now in different things, what is going. So, where do you see in the future in reference to your shows? I mean, how many balls are you juggling in the air now? You've got. Tell us a little bit about. Because we talked about a few of the other shows, very briefly. I know you're going to keep all this up. There's a lot of stuff going on here.
Well, I kind of, because I come from a musical background, Sean. So it's like, to me, these are my albums, you know. So my first album came out in.
They're all on vinyl, of
Yeah,
course.
they're all, yes. Well, the vinyl ones.
Vinyl albums.
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
yes.
The first pressings were during COVID.
Yeah.
Where I had those 10 dark. When I met you, I was doing these kind of very broad 10 dark secrets of 1798.
Did you ever do those again?
No, because
10 Dark Secrets and 10 Dark Secrets of 1916.
Yes, but I took one secret from each and I made them into the Murder Michael Collins and the Murder Wolfe Tone.
Yeah.
And when you get that deep in, you can't really come back out to the broad again. It's like when I went on your 1798 tour, like it's so brilliant, and you and Colin are so detailed and yet entertaining. And that is the most important combination, is to entertain.
It's got to be entertaining.
It's got to be entertaining. But you want to go back again and actually take notes this time.
Yeah.
You actually want to go and do it.
We do get a few with somebody on it 6 times, but he comes in with somebody, because if you do the tour, you can come back in for free and bring a mate. He can pay, but don't you be paying. And then we know their faces, and we go, were you here last month? This is my 3rd time. And this time he's got a book. And it's great to see that people that are they're starting to suck it up. And I know they're going to Google.
Well, you can go.
They're doing it.
Yeah, you can, of course, and you can go to Sean and Colum's tour 6 times, but always bring somebody new, or you're going to start looking crazy. And
you need a bit of cover.
Yeah,
he made me come here, but I didn't really want to go.
But they're what I call committed fans, and I have fans as well who come to all my shows. But I had the Collins show, which did incredibly well. Then the Wolfe Tone show, which I love doing, because as you know, I love 1798 more than any other period, because it's where you really bring it in. But of course, Collins loved 1798 too, and they were all versed in it. And Wolfe Tone would have been his hero, and Connolly's, by the way.
I've noticed that actually, that a lot of people from 1916, and not only that, they're from Young Irelanders right through to the Fenians, to the Irish Republican Brotherhood, right through to late 1900s, the 19th century, and then into the 1916 chaps, the guys that all got executed. Every one of them had their finger on the pulse when it came to 1798.
Yeah.
You talked about Connolly and Pierce. What was Pierce? Pierce says, we're now in the, this is the most holiest ground. Yeah. The so-called devout Catholic says in a Church of Ireland graveyard. So these 1798 people, revolutionaries, we keep talking about them, they had a massive influence right up until today.
Absolutely. And I even say to people, even the Republican movement, and people might disapprove or whatever, but I saw a video of Gerry Adams in 1983 talking about Wolfe Tone, and talking about, it was a documentary made by a bunch of young people, but they were, he said that the strangest question that needed to be answered was how the Protestants of Ulster had turned from this enlightened republicanism to unionism and loyalism.
What happened?
Well, I mean,
people are saying, what happened?
Well, it's a simple story, and things went wrong. They were treated very, very badly. But then in the new system, the new union, they got a better shape.
They got a better deal.
And then by the end of the century, like I say, Belfast is the Silicon Valley of the world. Yeah. So, and
also the fact that in many ways you talk about that home rule is Rome rule. In many ways, they sort of had it right.
They had it right. And so, but, again, to go to Maynard Keynes, the old ideas are it's the new ones that are the hardest ones to deal with. But Protestants have never had a problem with that, and Unionists never had a problem with that. The minute things changed, they changed their mind. And I believe, as much as they could argue that the Union was the top of the world in 1900, I could argue now that union between the two territories on the island is the most economically savvy thing we could do. The place would really take off. Yeah. And, that's why I'm going to bring this show. To me, it's my favorite show I've ever done, because I love talking about the past, obviously. But to me, the past is merely a key for the future.
Well, you brought in Professor O'Leary, who is one of my great academic heroes.
I love him. And
O'Leary, for me, is, when you listen to O'Leary, he's
I want to make him president.
Yeah, he's up there with him in Phoenix. Yeah, and they really, really bring it to life. I know Brendan is the new academic in this particular area, specifically brilliant at it. And O'Leary's stuff that he was coming out with in the Aaron's project and his books, the one that you were showing in your show, it's actually brilliant. And he lays it out. And he's not doing anybody any favors. He's just laying out the facts. He goes, there's the menu, boys.
No, but he's
what do you think?
But he's also honest. He says, I prefer a united Ireland. I'll be honest, I say that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it funny when people are surprised when people say they want to unite. Like they're
Yeah.
all giving out after Michelle O'Neill was made First Minister, and Mary Lou said we're closer to Unite Ireland. And everybody goes, "Don't say it, don't say it in case, don't say it in case the Unionists hear you." Like they know,
Yeah.
like it's
not babies, you know.
There's nothing more condescending. There's nothing more condescending than telling
to an Ulster Presbyterian.
Yeah,
is making a bollocks out of him.
Did you know that Mary Lou wants to unite Ireland?
Really?
Wow.
Here, well, we were surprised ourselves. Even Republicans were surprised.
And again, they have to make their argument why the union is better. And like but it's all about talking and sitting down and talking about it. But you see, this started for me, you know, with the brilliant Stephen Dunford, who was the man, the reenactor, the expert on General Humbert and the French landing, lived in Killala himself.
Stuff, yeah.
And he was brilliant.
I watched his stuff, and he was the game pioneer.
Yeah.
He was the real anorak on this stuff.
Oh, it was amazing. But he would come to Ulster and he would, you know, Betsy Gray's ceremonies and stuff like that. And he would meet all these guys, you know, at orange parades and everything like that. And, you know, both of them wearing a historical costume, basically. Yeah. But they would come out with stuff like cannonballs and pikes and muskets and things there. You know, so they were quite proud, as Guy Byners pointed out, that in every attic of every Protestant home, there's some 1798 stuff going on.
So it's not so much a pike in the thatch, but a pike in the attic when it comes to the Presbyterians.
Well, they'd have a nice attic now, you know what I mean? They'd have
a big attic.
They'd have a nicer way of doing things. And, you know, better cake too. And I mean, that's really what I'm looking forward to most of all in United Ireland is better cake. Honestly, tray bakes. I don't mean to go down the Derry girl road, but it's true.
I absolutely, you know, and toasters in the cupboards and stuff.
Well,
not in the cupboards.
I had a house in Donegal for years, and the next town, Dunfanaghy, was a very Protestant town. I grew up in Greystones in Wicklow as well. So I've huge experience living among Protestants, and I swear to God, the cakes are better. But who inspired me was Stephen Dunford. Mm-hmm. But then Eamon Phoenix, I went to see a talk by him at Mary Immaculate College, and he literally explained partition to me in about 20 minutes, extemporizing on his feet, no notes. The man, he used to just grab stuff like fire from the sky.
He was the master when it came to stuff like this.
Yes.
He made history easy for people to understand. I think myself and Colin and even many others.
But you could never tell what side he was on.
We see ourselves as his apostles.
Oh, absolutely.
And we openly say to people, by the way, we stole everything from, we've done our own work, but we're very proud to say that Eamon inspired us and Eamon would have given us the ideas. And we're just bringing it on. And Eamon wouldn't want that. He would, oh, you did it, so you're doing a great, because I spoke to him about it and he goes, you're doing a great job. But we'll say this, but there's also a guy called Tom Hartley in Belfast, and he's been brilliant on the Presbyterian stuff. Wow. This is an ex-Sinn Féin mayor. And fantastic stuff he's been doing, and I've been stealing all his stuff too. And I don't mean, and I tell them to their faces, and I say, no, you're doing a good job. You've inspired us all here.
But we should be stealing from each other, because this isn't a game where, you know, we're in competition.
It all belongs to me.
There shouldn't be a split. There shouldn't be gatekeeping. This should be all about sharing information and getting the place completely.
Let it all out.
Let it all out, and let everybody understand what's going on. Like so between Stephen and Eamon Phoenix, and then now Brendan O'Leary. Brendan O'Leary brilliantly went on the hunger documentary, and he spoke about the famine, and he's, you know, there's all these arguments, was the famine genocide, wasn't it? I said no, it wasn't, because there's definitions for that, but it was slaughter, which is a term made up during the Biafran conflict, which means people just stood aside and let it happen. And so I like that forensic approach, because I like people to use the correct terms for things. But with all of these guys, Steve Dunford, Eamon Phoenix, and Brendan O'Leary, they never betray some kind of bias towards one or other side or the other.
That is the essence of their brilliance.
And you can tell what their view is, though, because in my view, the sensible and fair thing is for everyone to be together in one community. I would say that about all partitioned places around the world. I really believe. And
you talk quite a lot about that as well in your introduction. So here, listen, this has been fantastic. We're now over quite a while now, and tray bakes, and us two could blabber on for another hour.
Oh, forever, and we do extensively when I'm.
But this is just our first one.
Okay,
and we're going to be doing a lot more, Paddy.
I would love that,
and we're going to be doing it. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we'll do it some way. Technology will find us out,
and we need to nail down that Colm Door fellow as well.
Yes, well, hopefully he's working in Dublin a lot, and he has been up in Belfast, so I need him back into the tours as well.
Yes,
and he knows that, and we've got loads of ideas. We're doing.
One man cannot carry the weight of all of 1798 on his shoulders.
Exactly. So I'm diversifying into the Beaver Forest and doing tour. I'm doing all these individual novelty talks, which is great.
Very good.
But I've still got the Dublin stuff going. I need and obviously we're expanding into doing things. We're spreading the word, but we're going on the street and doing it, and on social media is our weapon as well.
But here AI is working at the moment on a,
your
on a Sean
AI
Napier,
is something else.
on a Sean Napier that you can
Yes.
let loose on
Absolutely,
the streets.
absolutely. Just wait till I get my head around it. Well, you've got your head around
just a hologram. You know, I think AI is incredible. In the show, I've taken AI and I've created images of Belfast of the future, Dublin of the future. It's really fascinating.
I particularly like the Wolfe Tone one.
Yes.
Well, not the Wolf bit, but when you finally got it, we've got it right.
When I first put Wolfe Tone into AI, it returned with a wolf, an actual wolf. I mean, which would be fascinating because in Ireland would have a founding story like Romulus and Remus.
Well, we did have the wolves were once quite prominent in Ireland, of course. And the last wolf, believe it or not, apparently was killed around Liganeel in North Belfast. But that's another story and another rabbit hole. Yes. I do not want to go down. Paddy, all I can say is thank you very much indeed. This has been our first, and I think it's going to be loads more of this. We're just going to shoot the breeze.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, Paddy.
Thank you, Sean.
Let's get together again.
Aaron go bra.
Aaron go bra.